Yes.
All right, so let me appreciate formally the Champions Educational Foundation team, for this platform to have an exchange of ideas and knowledge. I really appreciate the team, the attendees. I know I have my mentors here, colleagues, well-wishers, friends, and I'm not sure I have enemies, but at least thank you very much for coming. Next slide, sir.
Okay.
So let me just give an overview of tonight's webinar. As we all know, the theme is the role of border control in the fight against insurgencies in Nigeria. So we'll be talking about the concept of insurgency. What exactly is insurgency? We'll be talking about the various types of insurgency. Is Nigeria the first country that will be witnessing this movement of insurgency? Then what are the practical examples of insurgencies in Nigeria? Then we'll talk about our border security, how secured our borders in Nigeria. They will just give recommendations as regards the role of border control in the fight against insurgencies. And in between the seminar, we'll just have an open interaction for about 2 or 3 minutes. I think I have permission from my mentor. We'll just open the floor for about 2 or 3 minutes to have an open interaction. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. So the next slide, sir. Yes, the concept of insurgency now. I want us to know that insurgency is real. Now, when I say insurgency is real, we probably have heard of news from local publications and international magazines about kidnappings, killings, banditry. I want us to know that insurgency is real. And when we talk about insurgency, insurgency has to do with violence. It has to do with armed rebellion. Most times they start a movement to oppose the government of a country. Now, I call insurgency a movement because it's by a group with a target or a goal. So insurgency, ranges from, violence, tales of terrorism. We also have political upheaval. They try and rebel against the government, amongst many others. So when we talk about insurgency, we are talking about terrorism, violence, armed rebellion, and most times attempt to oppose a government. The next slide, sir. So now that we understand, at least we have an overview of what insurgency is, there are actually types of insurgencies. There are many countries that have, witnessed that insurgent movement. Now, I gave about 3 or 4 examples of 3 or 4 types of insurgencies. Now, I want us to look at the Russian Civil War. The Russian Civil War actually began immediately after the First World War. Though it was a civic conflict, it was just the Red Army, the Soviet Union. They tried to defend their newly formed government against anti-Russian groups. That's also a type of movement, even though it was actually their government that tried to defend. And have the insurgency in Rhodesia, that's more like the Zimbabwe liberation. This Zimbabwe liberation, the insurgency in Rhodesia, it was a decade after that Zimbabwe gained independence as a result of that insurgent movement. So most time insurgency is a movement that is targeted at a goal. We also have Iraq insurgency. That was like the US-led invasion. That happened about a decade ago. It was during the regime of this Saddam Hussein. So there are types of insurgencies, and Nigeria is not only the country that will be witnessing this, these tales of terrorism and insurgencies. So developed nations have witnessed that movement, and they've been able to navigate through to be able to, curb that menace of insurgency. So let's talk about Nigeria now. What are the examples of insurgency in our country? The next slide, sir. So this is a picture of armed insurgents. Most times these these insurgents have, sophisticated weapons. They use weapons to oppose a government. They use these, sophisticated weapons to cause havoc, deaths, kidnapping, abduction, rebellion, and all manners of havoc in the country. So next slide, sir. So we have about a few examples of insurgency in Nigeria. And the first thing that many of us we are common with is the Boko Haram insurgency. This Boko Haram insurgency, it began about, if not a decade ago. These guys, I call them armed insurgents. They've caught so many things in the country. Talk about raping our women, talk about kidnapping, talk about looting. I'm very, very sure we are very, very familiar with the Boko Haram insurgency, even though people claim that they are financed by some terrorist group. We have the Boko Haram insurgency. We have the Herdsmen crisis. The Herdsmen crisis, it's most time as a result of this conflicts, herdsmen and farmer clashes. It happened most time in the northern regions. We also have bandits. In fact, bandits, unknown gunmen, they kidnap people, they ask people for ransom. But people claim that, especially from all these Nigerian police force, when you read news, they thought they released on publications that these people came from neighboring countries. They're actually insurgents that found their way to the country to cause all manners of havoc. So these are the examples of, practical examples of insurgency that we are facing in Nigeria. The Boko Haram, herdsmen, bandits, unknown gunmen, and whatever. The next slide, sir. So that's an example of, I got this online, armed insurgents, end Boko Haram. The next slide, sir. So let's talk about the root causes of insurgency. Even though the focus of this webinar is on the role of border control, we know that of probably what we have been listening to on news is that Nigeria's weak and porous border system. However, it's not only border system that's the major cause of insurgency. We have corruption, we have terrorism financing, there are political upheaval, people finance terrorists to be able to cause an insurgency movement. We have unemployment. There are so many unemployed youth that they try to find their way to the country. They try to form caucus and group to rebel. You have corruption, bad governance, and then the focus of this webinar, weak and porous border.
I'm disturbing. Oh, God.
Then the effect of insurgency now. Now that we understand, at least we have an overview of the root causes of insurgency, there are negative side of insurgency. We have been able to establish that insurgency is real. And one of the major effects of insurgency in Nigeria is emigration. So many people try and look for security of their lives and properties. People leave the country. Emigration. Insurgency causes fear and anxiety. When you wake up in the morning, you read national publications, you read the National Tribune, Punch, and then you see that so many people were abducted, kidnapping, we heard of the Chibok girls, we heard of bombing, bomb blast. These are things that can stir fear and anxiety in people, and also food insecurity, and that's it's happening live. Food insecurity, and when I say food insecurity, these bandits, these people, they find their way to agricultural regions, they spoil farmlands, they destroy farmlands, and these are things that cause hike in the prices of food. We also have the kidnapping and abduction. Most times they abduct people, they ask for ransom, then they also attack infrastructures. We have bomb blasts against mosque, churches, schools, and death. there are negative sides of insurgency. Insurgency is very, very real, especially in this country. Now that we have talked about the effect of insurgency, the next slide, sir. Now that we have been able to build the topic very well, let's talk about border control. When we talk about border system, what exactly does border control mean? What's the definition of border security? What does it mean to secure our border? Like I put here now, border security has to do with the control of, cross-border movements. Not only people now, how do we control people, goods, drugs, and tangible items? Now, with two reasons now. Number one, to reduce illegal immigrants, to reduce illegal flows, and also not to limit legal flows. So when we talk about border control, we are trying to control, cross-border movement of people. We are trying to reduce the illegal flow of people into our country, and also not to limit legal flows. That's just what border control is. The next slide. Next slide. So majorly, we have 4 locations in the country. I want us to know that Nigeria is bordered to the north by Niger Republic. And there are about 7 states in the north that we share border with Niger Republic. We have about Borno, Jigawa State, we have Sokoto, we have Yobe, Zamfara, and Jigawa. So Nigeria is bordered to the north by Niger Republic. That's in fact one of the largest border locations out of all the 4 locations. So we are bordered to the north by Niger Republic. We are bordered to the east by the Chad and Cameroon. So we share the border with Chad and Cameroon to the east. Then we are bordered to the south by the Gulf of Guinea. And then we are bordered to the west by Benin. This semi-border that people talk about. So that's an example of the map of Nigeria. I think that's just the map of Nigeria now. We are bordered to the north by Niger Republic, to the east by Chad and Cameroon, to the south by the Gulf of Guinea, and then to the west by Benin. Though people complain about the weak and the porosity of this border system, now we'll look at the border system exactly now. How weak are this system? Are they truly weak, or they are just people are just insinuating? The next slide, sir. Now, this is an example of a Nigerian border. And as a matter of fact, that Nigeria is, I said in the previous slide that Nigeria is bordered to the north by Niger Republic. That's to show how weak and porous our border system is. The picture in this slide is actually the border that we share with Niger Republic. Now, I decided to reference this research proposal online. That was about a decade ago. This you can see 2 people here, a custom officer and an immigrant. That's to show how weak and porous our border system is. That's an example of the border that we share to the north with by Niger Republic. So the next slide now. And about last year, I read from about 2 years ago, and I came across a national publication, I think Vanguard, and also on the Nigerian Tribune. Our president released a press statement. This administration, he claimed that only God can effectively supervise the Nigeria-Niger border. That was the border that we share with Niger Republic. And that was the previous slide that I shared. So for the next 2 or 3 minutes, with permission from my mentor, I want us to have an open interaction. Is it true that it is only God that can effectively supervise our border system? Is it only the responsibility of the government to supervise the border system? And I mean, is it true that only God can effectively supervise the Nigeria-Niger border? So let me open the floor now, Barrister.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this has been very engaging thus far, and we are looking forward to participation from the audience right now. Let us know if you agree with this statement that only God can effectively supervise Nigeria-Niger border or any other of the borders that have been identified. But before you can of course indicate if you want to speak, but before we welcome participation, I want to widen the scope of those borders a bit more, in the sense that the picture that we saw is something relating to border on the land. There is also border on the water, and there's border on the airspace as well. So I say that because one of the countries, prominently Cameroon, had initially had dispute with Nigeria regarding border on the water, regarding Bakassi Peninsula, when it came to the question of whether that territory was Nigerian territory or Cameroonian territory. So as you gather your thoughts on whether you want to agree with the proposition of God effectively supervising border or not, you may also want to dive into other type of borders like water, maritime boundary, and space as well. So I've seen one hand up from Daniel. Please, let's hear your view on this matter. Hello. There is now a second hand also from Dr. Mubarak. Is Daniel ready to proceed first?
Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. I don't believe that it's only God that can supervise the Nigerian border, because it sounds like more of a denial of responsibility. It's a governmental responsibility to be proactive in securing a nation's border. So including God in that sense, just a denial of responsibility. So it shows the lack of capacity on the government side to defend itself. So I don't think it's God that should just, it should not be like placed on God. We require the support of other stakeholders, including the state governments and local governments, and if need be, partners from abroad. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Mubarak, you want to agree that it's only God that can secure our border?
Yeah, I think the answer is very clear. Yeah, I think the issue of border control is a very complex one. And that kind of statement coming from the number one person in the country is just a sign of frustration. I can see where he's coming from, and I can see somebody that think perhaps the situation is a kind of a helpless situation. And typically in this part of the world, when you feel helpless and you feel overwhelmed, the last thing that we normally resort to is just to say we leave everything in God's hand. That is the maybe simple explanation or that I could deduce from the statement that he halted. So by and large, about the border stuff, I think the problem is a bit complex. I think it's because of the almost indifferences between most of those neighboring countries, those countries that we share border with, those countries that we share a huge number of things alike. So because of that, it makes it almost like an imaginary something, and it's so difficult and so complex to control things and to differentiate A from B. And by so doing, that almost turn everything in Nigeria, or let's say Chad, or let's say Cameroon, or what alike, to Nigeria without any much differences. So culturally, most of those people that we share border with were very close to each other. Some of those countries religiously were very close to each other, and people have been marrying each other for ages. They've been sharing things together for ages. So it's just so difficult, to separate A from B And like the first person has rightly said, I will agree with him that the responsibility still lies on our leaders, and it's just laziness that can make somebody alter that statement and say we leave everything to the hands of God. Yes, God has a role to play, but we also have a bigger role to. We also have our own role, all our own parts to play. I do understand that he might be overwhelmed. He's more experienced. He understands how things are going. He has understood the relationship between, say, for example, Niger Republic and Castina that has been existing for decades and centuries. So trying to separate Niger from Nigeria is actually a very, very difficult thing. But that being said, that does not still mean that it's impossible. When we have a country that we don't close our border or we don't monitor our border, be it land or air, there is no way we will not be talking about insurgency. So I believe the answer is no. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. I think we also have another hand up from Dr. Ahmed.
Not from
maybe.
me. It's from another audience here, Mr. Ibasharafadin.
Okay, that's very fantastic. Do you want to agree that we leave everything in the hands of God to secure our border?
No, of course that I would never agree. In fact, the citizens shouldn't say that. Talk much less of the leader that is supposed to be, in charge of running the affairs of the nation. And I don't think he's overwhelmed. No, I would not say that. I would think that statement signifies his level of irresponsibility. Like, why would you ever, as a leader that is supposed to be in charge of these things, various things in the society, including and not limited to security being one of the most important things, security of life and property of your citizens being one of the most important things that you're supposed to be accountable for in a country. Why would you, as a leader, say you would leave it in the hands of, while you could actually, as a leader, you are not expected to know it all. You are not expected to have it all laid out for you, have it all have all the solutions at hand. But that is why you have the human power of the society. That is why you have brains that are supposed to be, experts in this line. You have the police, you have the military, you have the immigration, you have the, talk about the militaries and the paramilitaries in the country. You have all these people to call on to. You have security experts to call on to. Sit on a round table and then find a lasting solution that will guarantee the safety of your citizens and their properties. Not undo it with levity and with irresponsibility, so much that it had eventually degenerated to escalated to insurgency in different parts of the country. States after states are being eventually are being conquered by these insurgents. In my opinion, I think it's just the height of irresponsibility on this present administration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another hand up from Nafisat Folarin.
Good evening, everybody.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah, my opinion, I also want to agree with the speaker that just finished now. As the president of a country, I don't believe he's supposed to say something like he's supposed to say it's left in the hands of God. Fine, yes, we all know that God is the ultimate, but at the same time, God will not come down and do anything for you. He's the leader, regardless of religion or cultural beliefs or whatever. You chose to be the leader of the country, Nigeria. So you have to put the interest of Nigeria first. That means it's not like you would not consider other countries and your relationships with them to promote, a good economy or whatever, good relationship. But when it comes to stuff like border control, you have to think about Nigeria first, their safety. it doesn't matter if the border is just one step over. Of course, you have countries like America, Canada and America being having close borders. You have them Mexico's and stuff like that. Still yet, fine, yes, you have cases where people would filter through those borders, but there's still strong border control. And it's not like it's God that's coming down to do it for them. And we might say that, yes, those countries are more advanced than us, but at least you start from somewhere. So for a leader to come out and tell your nation that it's in the hands of God, I mean, it's why did you choose to get elected as a president in the first place if you would still come out and say something like that to people that elected you? That's why they gave you the power to be able to carry out decisions like that. So I totally do not agree with that statement that it's only God that can save. When it comes to border control, it's only God that can save us. Yes, it's only God that can save us, but at the same time, you'd have to work towards protecting the country and the lives of people in the country and everything that has to do with Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much. So do we say have one hand up from your side, Dr. Ahmed, or is what it was the previous one?
No, it's a new hand.
Okay, all right. Maybe we will get you
time to address other things the moderator, mentor for the presenter. But on the issue, what I want to say is, as a leader, as a leader, we would be held responsible for our utterances, and we have to mind that, because even when you're frustrated, even when the situation is complex, there are some things that are not expected to come out from you. When you make this open statement, it will be dissected. It will be X-rayed, and then you are portraying weakness even to the opponent. You understand? And to your citizens that you are protecting, you are making them open. Understand? So it shouldn't come from the president. You understand? I think no matter how complex and difficult the situation is, that statement should not, just like Dr. Barak said, if you have insight into what is going on, in this fight of insurgency, in this border control, in all things that involve insecurity, you would know that it is quite complex. But if we are talking about making these utterances, this utterance that the president had made, it shouldn't, and we should learn from it. If we find ourselves in that position, understand that your words, you will be held responsible for them. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So before I hand over back to the presenter, I think that the poll that got from the submissions of everyone is that it's not possible to agree with that statement. So we've been able to collect answers, and it's the room is unanimous that God Almighty gave us the wisdom, He gave us the leader, He gave us the equipment and everything that we need. So it's a joke to not use those things that God has given us to actually protect our borders, to now expect God to come down and actually protect it, literally. Why I try to display this slide back, and I thank you very much, Prince, for actually bringing this research work to light to see, how porous the border is. This is not a border. This one that we look at on the screen is a joke. It's like, primary school pupils, drawing a line. And it's particularly complex because we're talking about land border now, and this is what we've got. What about if we're talking about maritime border, like I've said, what about, airspace border, where there will be, much more complex infrastructure required to actually protect the border than on land. So we can see that statement can only be the statement of irresponsible leadership. So I hand over back to you to continue the presentation, but thank you very much for raising the question. You've gotten the answer that we are not able to agree with this proposition.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for that wonderful submissions. So, okay, I already displayed the source of that press statement. The next slide, sir. So, the crux of the matter now. I want to give few recommendations. I want us to know that we are tasked with the responsibilities of demonstrating border security in our country. I strongly believe that a safe border, is a prerequisite for a safe nation. When our borders are safe, then we cannot start talking about a working nation. So in terms of policy recommendations now, we'll be talking about not only about the role of the government in securing the border. Of course, we'll talk about the role of the government in securing the border. We'll also talk about stakeholders. What can stakeholders do to secure the borders? Then we'll talk about civil society, and lastly, we'll talk about citizens. What impact can the citizens also bring to the table, in order to ensure that we secure our borders very well. So we'll start with the government now. The first thing I will talk about is adequate funding. Now, adequate funding has to do with how do we allocate our budgets. Of course, we are not the government, but at least we can give one or two few recommendations as regards to this. So adequate funding, we can increase our budget for security in terms of defense. Talk about strengthening our infrastructure, recruiting enforcement agencies, and also try and integrate a border security force. Of course, we have existing ones, but we can try and strengthen their capacity, to be able to curb the menace of insurgency. And also, we can also integrate security surveillance cameras within our borders. Of course, we are journeying further in the 21st century, but we can bring in, tech skills, tech knowledge, tech abilities. We can use examples of developed nations of the world, look at the way they do in securing their borders. We can bring in, all these cameras, security surveillance cameras. These are things that will help us to, monitor the arrival and departure of immigrants in the country. That's just for the government. But let's talk about citizens now. Next slide, sir. In terms of citizens now, there's this thing I used to say that Nigeria is our country. It's not the government country, it's our country. And as citizens, I strongly believe that we can create awareness program. Of course, this webinar is also an awareness program. We can create public awareness program in terms of conferences, organizing webinars, seminars. These are things that can sensitize the public as regards, how do we enlighten ourselves on the dangers of insurgency? How do we enlighten ourselves in terms of border security? This is a program where we can, rub minds together. We can exchange ideas as regards the role of border control in the fight against insurgency. Look at the NSAS as an example. That was like an awareness program, and we all saw the impact, or we all felt the impact of that NSAS. So we can, create awareness program as citizens. We can also integrate community engagement initiative. Now, this community engagement initiative has to do with community policing. This community policing they work better in a way such that they can collect information, talk about intelligence sharing. Majorly what they do is to complement the law enforcement agencies so as to carry out their responsibilities efficiently and effectively. And then the area of tech and innovations as citizens, I strongly believe in the potential of human capital in the country. I know Nigerian youths are, creative. We are innovative. This electronic border management system, these are things that can enable, border agencies to process the arrival and departure of immigrants. They're actually software solutions that they can read travel documents, they can detect violations, they can monitor citizens' identification. I did a research study on developed nations of the world, United States. I discovered that they have software solutions that, there are so many software that can monitor the inflow of people. These are things that we can also integrate into Nigeria border. I strongly believe in, like I said earlier, on the potentials of the youth. We can actually bring in biometric verification. We can bring in things that can identify citizens, record the data. and store this data. These are things that will help us to monitor the way immigrants flow in and they flow out of the citizens. We all saw the news about a few months ago, the killing of a young lady, Deborah. I won't really go deep into that. The news released by the Nigeria police force said that one of those guys responsible for the killing of Deborah came from Niger Republic, and up to now, the news died down. If we can create a tech solution, electronic border management system in our Nigeria border system, these are things that we're supposed to monitor the inflow of people. These are things that we're supposed to verify biometrics easily, efficiently, and also effectively. The next slide, sir. And also, of course, industry stakeholders and our civil society. Like I said earlier, Nigeria is our country. It's not the government's country. We all have our parts to play in ensuring safety in the country. We can, demonstrate our commitment to peace and security within our country. And also we can also channel investment support just to strengthen the capacity of the government to be able to, effectively secure our border system. And also we can carry out regular raids of illegal immigrants. These are community policing that can complement the effort of the enforcement agencies. The next slide, sir. So in conclusion, border control is very, very essential. We can't talk about a safe country. We can't talk about a safe Nigeria. We can't talk about a safe nation without a safe border. Tales of terrorism, insurgency, all this characterize the problems of insurgency in Nigeria. But if you can implement this, a few of these recommendations, these are things that will help us to strengthen our border system, to combat terrorism and also to achieve sustainable national development. So we don't just have people living the country in terms of fear. I don't know of brain drain, but at least this will help us to achieve the Nigeria of our dreams. So thank you very much, sir, for your time, sir. I think the next slide, sir. The next slide. I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prince, for this wonderful presentation. We will welcome contributions and questions from the audience. Even though I think that the presentation has been so engaging that we've had participation from the audience, we'll still require further participations and contributions. I thank you very much, particularly for the point you made about border control being about making sure that we ensure safety and we do not allow illegal inflows, but at the same time we do not hamper legal migration, because for a number of reasons people have the need to actually come in and out of the country for economic reasons, political activities, and some other issues. And that actually reminds me of the fact that some of these countries that you've mentioned are also in some form of alliance with Nigeria when it comes to whether regional economic bloc or continental organizations. So for sure, all of them are African countries and they are part of the African Union. Plus Benin Republic is also a member of the ECOWAS, where the West African countries sort of have some alliance in the regional bloc. In fact, the original idea was for all the West African countries to spend the same currency, to do like the European Union would do, to be able to invest together jointly in security in the various countries, which is the reason I think we still have our Nigerian passport today is a West African ECOWAS passport, so to speak, which allows you to be able to go in and out of those West African countries and all. The question then remains, how much investments have been made in these regional blocks to protect the the countries against insurgencies that have been confronted with them. So I think I'll yield the floor for Dr. Ahmed to make contribution or ask question while I come back to my point on what is the scope for the countries actually coming together to make investments in security of their countries against insurgencies, given that they are members of regional or continental blocs.
Okay, thank you very much, Barrister, for the moderation. And I want to begin by thanking Prince for that beautiful presentation. You've demonstrated knowledge of the subject matter and broader knowledge of Nigerian and history at large. So to start with, I just want to give a kind of preamble to insurgencies generally, then I'll come back home to Nigeria. So Prince has identified some causes of insurgencies, including porous border, unemployment, bad governance, and other things. I just want us to see what, when they are insurgent, when insurgents, what usually bring about them is, motivations and grievances against government of the day, and when it's their way of communicating to the government to yield to their demand. So they want to frustrate the government to say, if we keep doing this, then it would make art. So usually between the government and the insurgents and terrorists, there is a two-way communication. Give us this, we'll give you this. Give us this, we'll give you this, and stuff like that. So it's more of a power tussle, and insurgents is very expensive. It's usually very expensive. They need a place to stay. They need ammunition. They need personnel. They need to train. They need to recruit the machineries, information, getting information from the country they want to attack. It is complex on them, and government has to understand this scope. You understand, which they do. You understand, and before they make an attack, it's coordinated. They have the information. They know where they're going. They might even give information to government. If you don't do this, we'll do this, and stuff like that. So, in order for them to have safe operations, they usually need to move between borders, transnational movements, and that is where border control comes in. They usually come in, attack, and before you know it, before you blink your eye, they go back, leave the territory of that country. So it is usually difficult to trace them and to follow them. And they will allow the tension to die down. They make another attack. You understand? So, and they also breed on bad relationship or sour relationship between countries. So in Nigeria, for instance, Nigeria and Cameroon, they had a dispute over the Bakassi Peninsula. So they capitalized on that, and they would move into Nigeria, move into the northern Cameroon, and come back to Nigeria and all. Anyways, if we take, for instance, during as border control helped before, yes. The Algeria War of Independence, when the French colonies they were restricting the insurgents that they were fighting for independence. What did they do? They built what they call the Maurice Line. That is a fortified border. Is a fortified border across the length of Algeria and Tunisia, about 1,700 kilometers or something like that, or 1,400 meters. So they built this, and this is about 5 foot electrified border with about 5,000 volts of current to charge the defense. And this is because they understand that the Algerians, they have about 10,000 troops in Tunisia. So they have to break that barrier, because they get supplies of ammunition, they get supplies of finance, they get supply of everything through that border. So what the French colonies did was to build a border, and that actually weakened the operation of the insurgents. You understand? So that is one. And secondly is in Iraq. Okay, when US invaded Iraq in the Iraq War, when US invaded Iraq, Iraq, just like Nigeria, has a porous land border, and they're surrounded by about 6 countries. So they're surrounded by about 6 countries. To the east, I think to the east they have Iran. To the west they have Saudi, Syria, and Jordan. To the north they have Turkey, and to the south they have Kuwait. You understand? So, and all of their relationship between Iraq and this country. So Iran does not support them. So the movement was always there, supplying there. Those that want to loot the oil, they take the oil through Turkey. And then Saudi and Syria, Saudi and Jordan, they were tacit in it. They were not supporting Iraq, but they are not taking any step, kind of passive in it. So what did US did when they invaded? They built about 297 fourth borders and about 52 non-fourth borders. You understand? And that is a tactical approach to solving a problem. So what am I saying? Border control had been used before in about 31 different cases. These are just 2 examples, and it has been seen to be effective. But does it have its own disadvantage, or does it have its own backlash? Yes, because when you effect border control like that, what happened is they would start what they call guerrilla operation. They would just do some non-very violent operation, attacking strategic places and stuff like that. Like we're having in Nigeria, like we had in Nigeria with some guerrilla operation when Nigerian government was winning over Boko Haram at a point. So, and then they would come back to the citizens and trying to win them over against the government, putting out all sorts of news, putting out all sorts of information there, and making the citizens resent their government and having sympathy towards the insurgents, the terrorists. And by that is their one way of recruiting, okay? Because one way they usually use the outside border for sanctuaries, to recruit, train, and prepare, strategize for their next operation. So, and Nigeria is a fertile land. Like one of the causes is unemployment. So unemployed youth, brainwashed youth, people that feel disadvantaged, disenfranchised, and stuff like that, they will approach them. They know them. They will approach them and say, okay, look, government's not doing this and that. So that is usually, people have not said, okay, even if you are using border control, the counter-insurgent border control, you have to include it with population-centered inclusion, such that you have to target the population, people that that this terrorists will target as well. You understand? So that is border control works. Yes. Does it have some other backlash? Yes. And are those backlashes solvable? Yes. Okay. If you come to Nigeria and taking Boko Haram as one of the insurgents, Boko Haram, they capitalized on Nigerian-Cameroon border, which spanned from Chad and up north to the Bakassi Peninsula in the Gulf area. You understand? Which was thought to be rich in oil. So they fought over that for about 13 years or 15 years thereabout, even pre-colonial era. Because they feel it is rich in oil, and so the insurgents feel like, okay, you see that there's conflict between this country, and that was why it took a long time for Nigeria to be able to make any meaningful progress, because you need a coordinated effort between these governments to be able to solve. Because you cannot just solve your border. You share this border with other countries. They have to give you information. They have to give you intelligence information and other things. They have to come to round table, and that was what happened when the Chibok girls happened. The US government and UK government, they came around and said, okay, we need to do something. So that led to the multinational joint task force that they created between Nigeria, Cameroon, Benin, Niger, and one other country. And they made some progress at that point. So you need cooperation from other countries, you understand, to be able to do effective border control. And they need information sharing, they need tactical information. In summary, counter-insurgent border control is complex. It is, and in case of Nigeria, we have a large landmass just between Cameroon and Nigeria alone. We're talking about 1,700 kilometers or something. I mean, from Chad to Kilo. So it takes a long time to solve this problem. And then we have our border to the north, we have our border to the west, and all. So, and we're not talking about land border. We've not talked here and other borders. We are not coming to that now. So, is it achievable? Yes. It takes a while. It's achievable, but it takes a while. But it takes governments, dedication and the good is it you call it government not goodwill. It's to will. Yes, thank you. Will to want to do this.
Political will.
The political will has to be there. You understand? So, and if it has been done before, if US can, we're talking about 297 fourth borders built, 52 non-fourth borders built in Iraq. You understand? And if you know that this is a problem, then the thing is, okay, let's find a solution. I am not making it simple as, okay, just go there, build border across all Nigeria. No, it won't happen in a day. It won't happen. This was done over 6 to 10 years, even in Iraq, even with the might of US. You understand? But let's understand that this is a problem, and then let's have a timeline for it. Although, like I said, cooperation with other countries has to come in, because at the point Cameroon was saying no, they wouldn't share information with Nigeria when they were having the problem with Bakassi Peninsula. Although eventually, International Court of Justice eventually ceded that Bakassi Peninsula to Cameroon, and then eventually, when it was finally handed over to them, then there are we've had some success. And the effect is always there, because there are Nigerians in Cameroon, there are Cameroons in Nigeria. There are, those Nigerians that were feeding on the border, and I mean they were living in the Western Cameroon. They benefited from the transport of oil and other things and goods from Cameroon to Nigeria and other things. The economy was disrupted. Everything was there, and even those that live in Nigeria, the effect of insurgents and terrorism is overwhelming. And we have to start talking about what are the solutions. One of them is what we have addressed today, which is border control. And is it achievable? Yes. Is it possible? Yes. Are there side effects? Definitely. But those things are also surmountable. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much for that wonderful contribution. I think we have one message in the chat box saying a big thank you to the presenter. I've learned a great deal, the concept of insurgency and border control. We need to start having more of this conversation. My sincere appreciation to Champion Educational Foundation and the founder. This is from Idris Quadri. Thank you very much. And there is also an opportunity.
This Quadri is a senior colleague from medical school. Is a good friend of mine. So I thank him for attending the program today.
Yeah. So over to you, Dr. Mubarak. I think your hand is also up.
Thank you, the presenters. And I want to commend the first presenter. I think his slides are not worthy. They were quite easy to follow, even if you're not listening. Just looking at the slide, you can appreciate what he's trying to pass across, and that is very excellent of him. And the commentary so far have not been short of anything excellent. They've been very rich in thoughts and in other things too. So I will just quickly pass my message regarding the border control and the burden involved in border control. Just for perspective, I would like us to have like a breakdown of how expensive border control is, and whether as a country we can actually toe that line as a kind of means, to achieve or to overcome the insurgency. Sometimes in 2013, or the Jonathan-led administration decided to award a contract to install a CCTV camera just within Abuja metropolis. The budget was about $460 million just to install the CCTV camera. We're not talking about employing people that will continue to do the surveillance and all that. Just installation alone was to cost Nigeria about $460 million. As at that time, our national budget was less than $15 billion. Today, Nigerian budget is just burdened around $40 billion. and that's the biggest we've ever had in history, which is amount to 17 trillion naira. Texas alone in United States, the budget per year, that was in 2021, is about 250 billion. So let's compare it. The whole Nigerian budget is 40. Texas alone is 250 billion. United States, Mexican border, just for 1 year, it costs US about $1.2 billion to secure the relationship between US and Mexico. I mean, the amount they spend to ensure that they don't have enough people crossing the border from Mexico to US, the intelligence, the whole thing cost United States about $1.2 billion. Again, our own budget, the whole national budget in Nigeria is about $40 billion, just for perspective sake. The number of employees that work for immigration in the whole of the United States is about 20,000 employees, active employees. You and I can only guess the number of immigration officers that we have in Nigeria. They are actually less than 2,000. So the reason why I'm bringing this is for us to see in reality, can we actually finance this? Yes, we have to pursue political will. Even if there is political will, are we buoyant enough to install CCTV camera across these borders? Do we have enough money to employ officers that can oversee these borders? And we shouldn't forget the kind of landmass we are talking about. These are square kilometers. I mean, thousands of square kilometers. We are not just talking about the kind of population, the kind of landmass of Lagos or Benin or something like that. You understand? We are talking about thousands of square kilometers. So we can imagine the effort involved. We can imagine the kind of technology know-how that we have to put in place for us to achieve this. But what can we do? I believe that there's something we can do towards achieving or towards countering this insurgency. I would say I'll rate a few things before talking about border control, because it's very obvious as far as Nigeria is concerned. There are some things that we could do that will assist us towards the insurgency. I mean, countering the insurgency quicker than targeting the border control, because the border control is very expensive. It's achievable, but it takes a very long time, especially for poor countries like Nigeria. So what can we do? Things that people have found to be cheap, effective, and within a very short time, we can achieve a very quick result. Is number one, state policing. Statistics have shown across the world that countries that decide to use state policing, in which the idea that the present state that we have in Nigeria, in which everything is controlled from the central, we decide to dissolve it and give a huge number of power to the state, to the community, to police themselves. You understand? It gives a fast and a quick result in countering insurgency more than border control. What else has been proposed? You understand, especially for countries like Nigeria that is cheap, community orientation. We need to spend money on stakeholders. We need to influence decision makers, the imams, the pastors, the community leaders. Even if it involves bribing them, we have to launch a campaign against these people so that when people identify them, a kind of whistleblowing stuff can be arranged. This is also found to be cheaper and more effective. Then largely poverty control. You all will agree with me that majority of where we're having this problem are poverty-laden zones. Yes, we have challenges towards the Cameroon axis. We have challenges towards the Benin. But you and I will see that the kind of challenge that we have in the Niger Chad axis are not comparable to this axis. And what's responsible for that? Poverty. So what government can do in curbing this insurgency is to ensure that all what UNESCO is saying, and they can get a lot of funds towards this, UNICEF and all that, you understand? If we can have a very good poverty control, it will be very difficult for this insurgent to recruit more members. And if it's difficult for them to recruit more members, the kind of orientation that people that goes to school and their welfare, you know, they will have, it will be very easy for the community policing to be achievable. So Another thing that people have found to be more effective than border control is education. We have to spend money. I'm happy that we had a topic that's borders about education yesterday. Nigeria is not spending anything on education. Ideally, there's a percentage that the United Nations has proposed to all nations that are very serious to spend on education. We are not even spending a quarter of it on education. We are aware about the ASU strike in the last couple of months. I mean, I'm even talking about the basic education, which is the primary education. So these are the problems. These are the things that if we are to spend money on, we should first tackle. If we could tackle all this, then it's easy for us with the little budget we have to counter insurgency faster than border control. It's very difficult for the like of US, the like of Russia or big country to come and intervene because they don't really have vested interest in Nigeria unlike before. So where are we going to get money to finance all this? Border control is extremely expensive, especially when we want to tow the line of technology in terms of getting CCTV, in terms of employing more staffs and making sure that each and every person that cross the border is identified. These are very expensive exercises. Can they be achieved? Yes. But what I believe is that it's more of a long-term approach towards solving insurgency, in which we need to start investing little by little. I would rather say we should start from identification number. Let's ensure that we know our population. Let's ensure that for every person you see in the bush or you even see in the city, you can identify that person by saying, this is the name of this person, this is where you come from, this is your location. And that is one of those things that is very key in curbing insurgency. Identification. Have we invested enough on identification? I would say no. Do we even know our population? I would say no. Have we invested on community orientation? I would say no. Are we paying lip service to state policing? I would say yes. So have we invested on poverty and educating our people? I mean, poverty control and educating our people? I would say no. These are the things that developing countries like us should focus on. Then, plus border control. But border control alone will not achieve much. It's very, very expensive. That's the take home I want us to have. Yes, it's very important in doing all these things, but we should go and look at the budget and the cost of controlling our border. Like I said, just US alone, US-Mexican border last year alone cost the United States government $1.2 billion. That is almost over 40 of our budget. We can't afford it. It's just so difficult to keep up with that kind of budget. Can we get it cheaper? Yes, we can get it cheaper, but that will be in a long term. When we improve our poverty, we've educated our people and alike. I would like others to also, give room to others to also comment. I can keep on saying all these things and really have all the statistics based on the little research I've done. But for others to also come in and make their own contribution, I'll be drawing the curtain here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the contribution, particularly bringing to perspective what the nature of the challenges are when it comes to funding and what the statistics are saying. Because I think that it's very easy to say, let's go there and protect our borders, but we do need infrastructure. And that goes back to the point earlier made also about distinguishing between land border, maritime border, airspace border. It does appear that there's so much infrastructure to be put in place to be able to control the border. I think that also connects to political will as well, because as small as our budget is in Nigeria, one may ask questions: how much of those amounts actually go into security, and how much goes into just servicing the cost of governance, where it appears that large chunk of money goes into cost of servicing governance rather than financing education, financing security, putting in place measures to control the border and make sure that property and lives of people are actually protected. There are 2 hands up again. I think, Daniel, we need to go first. 3 hands now. Okay, this is getting more interesting. So we now need to be more conscious of time. So, Daniel?
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. The topic is so interesting, and concerning border control, honestly, I believe that the government is aware of it. The government is well aware of the porousness of the border, but sincerely, it's not a national priority. So the government is not a national priority. The newsmakers, or how I say, the media may talk about it, complain about it, but it is not a national priority. If it were like a state, because ideally it should be based on our law, it should be a federal government responsibility. But presently, it's not a national priority. We just hopefully it will be a national priority, but it's not a national priority, and the states don't have enough legality or rights to champion border control, as earlier said by one of the
Yeah, I think we lost the connection there. But thank you very much. That's a very good perspective, connecting back to political will as well, that if it's not national priority, then that explains why there will be layback in making investments into it. At second hand up is from Dr. Ahmed. Hello, are you there?
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I'm driving. So, hello.
Hello. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. I've raised my hand because I want to thank Dr. Mubarak for broadening the scope of the discussion. You understand? And of course, there's no shining away from the fact that border control, pursuing border control is extremely expensive. And for a country like Nigeria, if you want to drill into the economy of Nigeria as it is at the moment, Nigeria is poor. Irrespective of what the government wants us to believe and other things, even the government, they know that we are poor. But and there are things that could be done. The state policing is one that has been said, which I am a proponent of. You understand? Compared to federal policing, I mean, if you are in a state in a bush, and then the people knows the localities, the state should be responsible. The state government should be responsible for securing the life and property of the people of our citizens, with federal government having an oversight function. You understand? Even if there will be federal bureaus, you understand. For state policing, we should give this a priority. And I mean, we can have another webinar where we'll see role of state policing in security or in securing the nation. You understand? He also made points to education, poverty, and other things, which in true sense, yes, they are some of the many problems that are facing us in Nigeria. But again, if we'll pursue them, they are also expensive for a government that is not prioritizing the security and safety of life and property. Well, it's easy to say they are not prioritizing. I mean, this doesn't mean they are not doing anything, but when we don't see the effects of it, and things get worse day by day, then I think we are right to accuse them of not prioritizing the security of life and property in the country. So, in summary, we should take home that there are several ways to go about this thing, like planning things, you understand, and one after the other, and in the long run, we would have a safe country that we also desire. Like, you know, we talk about poverty, illiteracy. These are useful tools for insurgents to recruit their members. You understand? These are the things they capitalize on. and somebody that is hungry and you're promising him $1,000 every month or something like that just for one operation, he would gladly take it when he's rather than dying and stuff like that. He would just be like, follow, and what has government done? And by the way, so the problem of security or insecurity in Nigeria is quite complex and it's multifaceted with several ways to go about it. Border control being one of them. What we are doing tonight is x-raying or looking at how border control and how it could be used in Nigeria, which we've seen. But of course, there are no solutions without their own shortfalls. One of the shortfalls of the border control is the cost. Okay, which again, if they are dedicated, if we have political will, if Nigerians change the narrative of things, and they are seen to be serious by Committee of Nations, I'm sure there are several countries that would want to partner with them. Let me give an instance. US, when they made the multinational joint task force that include about 5 countries that are being affected by Boko Haram, they had their own reason. One, it's an opportunity for them to gather intelligence in these countries and their neighbor, and they use it to their own advantage in case any of them want to attack them in future. Two, it's a way of strengthening or showing their strength and power of saying, yes, we are still the world power. We are able to do this. We can do this. And three is I think there's one other reason which I cannot remember now. So the U.S. government had these incentives to come into the nation and help with Boko Haram. But if the government, if you release funds, and some people just feel like, oh, today, I mean, money has arrived, and it's time to marry a second wife or party or spend dollar for next election, and you're not seeing results, nobody will take you seriously. So if the government shows strong political will, there are multinational organizations and other world powers that would be ready to support us. But true, yes, we should consider all other factors that are contributing to this. Security, I mean, poverty, education, and all that, all factors, I mean, contributing to insurgency as identified by Prince earlier on. And if you tackle the causes of a problem, then you're tackling the problem one way or the other. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much. We are now practically out of time. I saw one hand up from Ms. Aishat Absalam. I think we can have that and then have the closing remarks from M. Toyin. I think she dropped a message. I really appreciate Prince for this excellent presentation. This effort you put into the slides is really commendable. Use of fewer words and incorporation of pictures to buttress your point are quite apt. Good job. Keep it up. I completely agree with that. Do you want to speak, or the words in the chat box suffices?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So let's move on to closing remarks. M. Toyin, are you in the room to give us closing remarks?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
That's fine. I really appreciate the presenter and the mentor and other contributors on the topic of discussion tonight. I just pray that one day we have the members of the Executive Arm Foundation. Hello?
Hello? Yes.
Okay. I pray and hope that members of the Executive Arm Foundation will also. Ahmed Singh, are you there?
Yes, but I see that it's on the road.
Okay, yes. I said that I've observed of late that when we have our webinar from the fellowship arm of the foundation, we don't get to see most of the executive members. One of the things I would have loved is to have them participate in these presentations so that we can even have like a press release or a communique that will be published like on our sites or on some social media platforms or even newspapers to represent our positions on these topics. Because yesterday we had a presentation and today we had one too. It's not something that we just have and it will go like that. It's something that we ought to make public to represent the position of the foundation. People have made brilliant submissions and contributions. There are things we ought to like put together. For instance, the publicity secretary of the foundation ought to be part of the meeting and to take notes some of these things for the purpose of publishing them. You understand? Not that we just have presentations and at the end of the day we just have another one another time. So without taking notes of these things, because it's something to actually pass across to the larger members of the country. So I hope the recommendation will be that members of the executive should also be part of these presentations. So, but in any case, the topic has been brilliantly discussed by the prince himself, like the mentor called him the other time. And I think we've learned one or two things from the contributors as well. So I want to appreciate everyone for staying to this time to participate in the webinar. And we pray that when we call upon you to also contribute and participate in subsequent ones, everyone will also be willing to do that. So in the absence of any other business, I want to move the motion for the suspension of today's webinar till another time where we have some other contributions and presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think that's been a wonderful presentation and a very good close remark as well. The point is noted. Prince is also a member of the executive, a general secretary at that. So I also have one other person join Femi, who is also a fellow and an executive member as well. I think they have to take the point back to the executive committee for us to have participation of more members of the committee going forward, especially the publicity secretary. I would also make efforts to bring that to their attention to make sure that subsequent ones, they are able to participate more actively. I do hope that everyone would enjoy the rest of the evening and have a fruitful week ahead. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.